Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Dave and Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Ohio death metal band Sanguisugabogg.
Ohio! No, that's not how you pronounce it.
It's not. The band's new album, Homicidal Ecstasy, will be released on February 3rd via Century Media Records. Formed in just 2019.
Yeah, this is still silly. Huh? Everything we're about to talk about here is just silly. So
yeah. This is album number 2 from Sanguisugabogg, which follows up their 2020 debut album, Tortured Whole. For this album, everything became more legit, says vocalist Devin Swank. Indeed, Sanguisugabogg has emerged from the pandemic, toured the US and Europe, with Homicidal Ecstasy made a record that will go down as a benchmark for modern death metal. They're no longer the band of meme-inspiring miscreants. The musicianship, the production, the lyrics, which delve much more into horror and body horror, are more thought out, says Devin. It's not just a bunch of dick and fart jokes. After lockdown, once the restrictions from COVID lifted, we were hungry, not just to tour, but to start writing again. Had moved from bass to guitar, and Drew also started playing guitar. The feeling was that sky's the limit. That's when we started writing and adding new songs like Necrosexual Deviant to the set, and started to see the new songs getting better reactions than songs from the previous 2 records. It was drummer Corey Davidson who once again helmed the production duties. Heading from tour to the studio, Sanguisugabogg blasted through a set of road-hammered songs before handing off mixing duties to Converge guitarist and studio vet Kurt Ballou at God City Studios. I would call that our come to Jesus moment, says Devin. We are huge fans of Kurt's music and love the sound of his records. We wanted to work with him long before we were signed to Century Media, and what we got back exceeded our expectations. He took Sanguisugabogg and made it sound like us on steroids. So, Duncan, my man, you're a big fan of Tortured Whole.
I loved it. I loved it. Which, I mean, once again, for the people out there that listen religiously to every word that we say, they'll know that I am not the biggest death metal fan.
True.
So I have a niche that exists in the death metal genre, and it turns out Sanguisugabogg are that niche. Scratch just right on that itch perfectly.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. So, what did you think? What did you make of Homicidal Ecstasy, Duncan?
Well, when we listened to Tortured Whole, I was full of praise, and the reason I was full of praise is I thought it delivered something that I felt the genre was kind of lacking, which was a back to basics. No airs or pretense, just good old-fashioned death metal, like your grandparents used to listen to, on the porch, in a rocking chair, rocking it to a bit of Morbid Angel. What I loved about it was how raw, intense, and just it's kind of it's a death metal equivalent of parting your legs in front of someone and daring them to kick you in the balls. And closing your eyes as well, so you never know when the kick's going to land. And that was it. Every time you kind of felt you'd got your finger on the pulse of what the tracks were doing on Tortured Whole, they would switch up and you get this savage groove, brutal kind of blast beats, guttural vocals. And so I was very impressed. And we remarked at the time that they'd only been going for a year.
Yeah.
Well, this is a year into their career, and they've nailed the brief, right? I was not expecting another album as quick, right?
No.
Not only was I not expecting an album so quick, but when we listened to the single for Pissed, it floored me because it did sound like a band who had completely leveled up.
Yeah.
A lot of that was the production. I mean, you can tell this is recorded by a drummer. We'll get back to that in a second. Certainly, there's something about drummers recording music. I don't know what it is. The drums are really clear, really clear. But everything about it, the guitars just had more oomph behind it, more presence. Vocals were great, but I thought it showed a much more kind of savage mid-pace like side of Sanguisugabogg, which was definitely there on Tortured Whole, but they never leaned into it too much. So I was interested to see if Homicidal Ecstasy would follow that through, or what we're going to get. And what we're getting here is almost kind of Tortured Whole version 2.0. It's like everything that worked on that album has been refined and made better, and then brought to the table. But they've also brought a couple of new tricks with them. And that couple of new tricks is that I think they have mastered the art of the let's call a groove. Like, you know what I mean? Like all these songs, just like even the ones that are like savagely fast.
Yeah.
There's a point where you just feel like they know exactly what the listener or the audience and the crowd want, and that's when they deliver it. It's like you can tell that they're keen fans of the genre themselves, because they stick very much to what works as opposed to trying to maybe dabble in things that don't. It starts off with like it starts off and then just continues to just fucking make me smile with Black Market Vasectomy. So that's them, you know, that's the humour that they're talking about. The dick and fart joke's gone completely, right, guys? It starts off with that, and it really does set the tone. The guitars are ferociously heavy. I mean, just like a great production. Drums are loud. They're so well mixed, man. Honestly, they're so well mixed. You'll obviously get it's your wheelhouse, so I don't want to steal too much. And I know that you've got a fucking semi for that snare drum. But like what I noticed about it, like just in general, is like everything is crafted about tightness without all the technical wizardry that comes with trying to create tightness. So I'm sure there's stuff happening. I'm sure like keener ears will be able to hear bits where things have been tweaked or whatever. But this does have the intense sound of a practice room. You know, like just a really well mic'd up practice room. Face ripped off. I had to stitch it back on after listening to it, Dave. The same idea. Like it builds up a huge head of steam. Vocally, I think this is better than the previous album. I think that actually I prefer the mix on his vocals, and it hasn't moved too much of it. And I don't know how much of that is the actual recording or the actual mastering at the end from Kurt Ballou. We'll get to him at the end. But the album continues to weave through. None of the songs go longer than 5 minutes. They don't have to go longer than 5 minutes, but they won't they won't rest on their laurels, even when it's a short track like Hungry for Your Insides. That track is genius because it gives you would expect the track the shortest on the album is the one that's going to have ridiculous blast beats and savagery, and it doesn't. It's the track that comes after it that does. So it almost sets as this interesting precursor to Skin Cushion, which when that kicks in is just ferociously fast blast beats. Just like good old fashioned savage, like fucking late 90s, early 2000s, death metal in your face. But then the band, once again, are showing different sides. So you like A Lesson in Savagery, for example, is one that, if anything, it allows itself to languish a little bit more into a slower tempo, building up like a lot more atmosphere. And when I say atmosphere, I don't mean like there's synths in the background or anything. It's just a choice of chords. It just has a more evil sound, which Sanguisugabogg aren't really an evil sounding band. You know what I mean? Like for the most part, when you listen to it, it's balls to the wall death metal, but it doesn't like play with particular chord usage that would make you think, all right, well, that's satanic, man. It has none of that in there. So that track allows you to build a bit more of it. The back half of the album is where things get really interesting, from a lesson in savagery down to Feeding for the Bloodshed. The songs are longer. I think you get a much more interesting, kind of more mature version of the band. I think this is where they really start to show the songwriting chops. Whereas the first half of the album is really about blunt force trauma. The back half of the album is blunt force trauma, but I think it's an indication of where the band might be going next, which is very, very exciting. I think production on this is about as good as you're gonna get, like, for this sort of stuff. It is just so. It's like an exercise in raw brutality, and it's really, really, really well put together. Kurt Ballou, I mean, have we found anything this guy has ever mastered that has sounded like mediocre? It does feel like if it does feel like that scene from Rocky IV where they're injecting Big Ivan Drago as he's running up a treadmill at a 10-degree angle. Yeah. It does kind of feel like he's put them on the treadmill with their instruments and then just started injecting them full of the good shit. Because the band just sound so ferocious and so heavy, and there are certain bands where I know we do it a lot where we're like that. I wonder how this is going to sound live. I know exactly how Sanguisugabogg are going to sound live, and it's what I'm hearing right now, and that's what gets me excited about it. I genuinely think they're one of the most exciting bands in death metal just now. I loved Tortured Whole. This is better. This is better. This is album number 2 for a band that are coming into their 4th year as a band, and they've released, in my opinion, a flawless death metal album. So I fucking love it. Absolutely love it. This isn't my scene, dude. This is this is not my scene. And they particularly, and I know we're still to get a 200 Stab Wounds album coming this year as well, which, I mean, they're not the same, but they do fall under the same umbrella, and I'm excited about them because they're another band that are relatively young in their career and they're out to make a statement. That I think the statement is, and I think we called it when we did Obituary, this could very well be one of the best years for death metal ever, and we are not out of January yet. So that's just fucking crazy. So yeah, absolutely loved it. I think these guys are amazing. Everything they do, and then just to top on top of that as well, clearly do not take things seriously. At all. Like, the song titles are great examples of that, but their online presence is absolutely amazing. Like, they're the masters of the meme. Like, fucking every time a post comes up, I end up fucking pissing myself with laughter. So yeah, I'm looking forward to their eventual visit to Scotland, and hopefully we get a chance to have a chat and have a beer with them, because they're fucking amazing. So you didn't like this album, because I loved it. So I can tell it in your face. I can read it, Dave. You're like that. They've sold out. They went all Kurt Ballou. There's no way you can't love this album.
I love Kurt Ballou. I love Kurt Ballou.
But that, like, just in general, like, listen, like, if I all the way through it, I'm like that. Whenever a big, like, nasty groove come in, there's Ride Cymbal and that fucking pickled onion snare hit, something like that. Dave's just, like, filleting himself raw right now. Fucking raw.
I really enjoyed Tortured Whole. I did. But I feel like Homicidal Ecstasy has just taken the band to the next level. I think it's still still tonally very dank and grotesque, like Tortured Whole was. But this sounds like almost like more chiseled or something. Like it's less meat and potatoes than the last album. There's a slightly more technical feel to it. Now, I don't want you to like think, oh well, they're turning into a technical death metal band. I don't mean like that. But the ideas and the songwriting feels more detailed in places. It's still got a very kind of like slow, groovy. It's got that kind of chugging brutality to it. Almost like it's like a modern Bloodduster to me. That in a lot of ways. But there are moments on each track where they just kind of elevate the fretwork and the drumming to a slightly more technical place, and you can hear it straight away on Black Market Vasectomy. There's a middle section on the track where the riff work becomes a little bit more elaborate, and Cody the drummer starts playing little kind of accents of the ride cymbal, and it caught my attention straight away. I was like, oh well, that's really cool, that's really different. Like, it's not, they don't usually go that intricate. But there's moments like that kind of scattered throughout the album. Obviously, these guys are still all about the heaviness, though. Like this album delivers that massively. Like, I was like, when that first track kicked in, I was smiling like from ear to ear. I was just like, oh yes, this is awesome. This is, and there was like a moment where actually just like I burst out laughing. I was like, this is so heavy, man. Like,
that's ridiculous.
The bit at the end of Black Market Vasectomy goes from like this like kind of fast attacking snare, and then it goes into this like really big discordant kind of groove riff, and it's such like a very satisfying kind of switch up. And then there's even, and I rewound, or like I skipped back the track a few times to check I wasn't actually hearing things. But at the end, near the end of track 1, there's a hand clap And it just happens once. There's one hand clap, and I was like, when I heard that, I was like, was that? And I rewound it, I was like, that's a fucking hand clap. And there's just one of them, just one in there. And I'm just like, just once and never again. I was like, but that was kind of cool, like, because it's like so like bizarre and like just dropped in. But I hope other people pick up on it, maybe even get involved in it.
I had not picked up on it, but
really?
like we're doing it live, Dave.
Yes.
Doing it live.
Well, I hope they do live. I hope other people pick up on it. But that couldn't prepare me for like track 2. Face Ripped Off is just unbelievably good. Like so punishingly heavy. The rhythm of that kind of main groove riff just had me like headbanging like a son of a bitch. Like it's very Moorish. And the chord that's played during the verse is just so disgusting. And rhythmically, it sounds different to track 1 as well. So like, it never feels like they're just kind of playing the same thing over and over again. I think that's one of the main improvements, to be honest, on this album. They've managed to make the tracks more individual. I don't feel like I'm just listening to the same track with the same ideas, or they're using the same blueprint on every track. You can hear there's been an involvement, even though it's only been like a couple of years, and the songwriting especially, and even just the way they kind of utilise the different tempos and the different feel. Pissed is a great example of that, how they kind of merge that like the slow kind of churning death metal heaviness, but it's got this like disco beat going over the top of it, and then like it slides into these like this kind of attack of like blasts and kind of old school death metal riffs.
How much do you think that comes from playing live?
Oh yeah,
themselves.
A lot.
It's a case of they went out, they played that previous album live, and they've got a feel for where the crowd maybe starting to lag a little bit, and that's influenced back into the songwriting. Because I'm with you on this one. Like, it's not only that they have their own personality, but like I said before, it's like it's like they're reading my mind for exactly when I'm like that. Right, enough of this riff, and then they're like, the next riff comes in, it changes tempo or does something different.
Exactly,
it's like they really have it down to a fine art on this.
Yeah, the tracks never stay in one place for too long. You never get bored, or they don't stick on the same riff. They do keep you engaged with the song structures, and I think that as musicians, it feels tighter as well this time around. This album is not just a reproduction of the same thing over and over again with different lyrics. This is 12 individually fleshed out tracks that give you something different on each song, but it's got that demented Sanguisugabogg charm just jizzed all over it.
Oh dear.
It's actually, though, there are some moments that are quite catchy as well. I think lyrically, I think Devin's created some far more memorable moments lyrically on the album. His style feels even more percussive this time, and it was on the last album as well, but this time they've really kind of honed in that, and for me it's made some of the vocal lines easier to kind of latch onto. So like on my third listen, I was actually like starting to kind of almost like grunt along with them, you know what I mean, like a really shite George Corpse Grinder, you know what I mean, like basically Chris Barnes, but shiter, basically is what it sounded like.
Fired, love it.
I totally agree that the production on this is just outstanding. Like, I think where the last album was pretty kind of filthy and swampy, this production is cleaned up a little bit, but they haven't diluted the integrity or the character of the band in any way. It's still ugly enough for it to be Sanguisugabogg, but as I said, it sounds jacked, absolutely jacked. I love the production. I think Cody and Kurt Ballou have absolutely smashed out of the park. I think this delivered the personality and the brutality that I was hoping for from Sanguisugabogg, but also, it gave us a little bit more. I think the songwriting is better. I think that the ideas are better executed. The production's obviously been turned up a notch, and there's little elements of experimentation in the guitars. You can hear in the background of, I think it's Narcissistic Incision. There's like kind of eerie, kind of like picked guitars in the background, which is like giving it this really kind of ominous tone. And then same with Proclamation of the Frail. They really kind of pushed the boat out on that track in terms of like the timings and the switch ups. It's a little bit more complex in structure. And the drumming is just like, it was probably my favourite track drumming wise. Very like, it's got very kind of like freestyle, kind of, approach to his playing. His fills on that track in particular, very kind of jazz-like, almost like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of like Elliot Hoffman, Car Bomb, that kind of like level of kind of technicality to it. And yeah, like, I need to mention it. The snare drum is fucking unbelievable. Like, that's a chef's kiss of a snare drum. Like, if you've ever heard one, that is like, what can you say about that snare? It's fucking awesome. Yeah, I love this album. I definitely thought it was a step up from the last album. I can see myself going back to this a lot. Scoring wise, what did you think? Where would you put it in score for this one?
Well, we're doing it early, aren't we? So yeah, I was thinking about this. I'm almost sure, and my brain sometimes fails me in these things, I gave Torture Toll a 4.5.
I think so.
Yeah. I think so. So let's do the math here. 5. It's getting a 5 out of 5. I think this is in the time we've been doing Metal Epidemic, I think this sits right behind that Cannibal Corpse album as my favourite death metal thing that's coming to review.
Right.
I think it is. I think it's great, and I think they're tapping into something. I mentioned this before. I think it's not a rebellion, but I think there is an answer to a question that hasn't been asked, and that question is: do you wish your death metal wasn't all pristine and technical? And if the answer to that was Sanguisugabogg, then it's yes. I think there's a whole lot of people out there that just want to get filthy drunk and listen to just fucking nasty death metal. And Sanguisugabogg are that band championing the cause and the soundtrack to like the best and most regretful night out you'll ever have. If the Walk of Shame had a soundtrack, it would be this album. I love it, absolutely love it. Nice. Spun this to fucking death already, and we'll continue spinning it a lot for the end of the year. I expect this to feature on my end of year list comfortably. So nice.
Yeah, I think I'd scored Torture Toll slightly lower than you.
You did, yeah.
When we reviewed it, and I think I definitely think this is a step up. I think this is, for me, it's probably a 4.5. I obviously reviewed the Obituary album earlier in the year, and I still think I scored that the same 4.5, and it's a really fucking good death metal album. I'd put that on par with this. I think it's just as good, and I think these guys, I think they are on their way to being one of the kind of heavyweights within this genre. I think it's that good. Like 2 albums in, like, and
that's the insane bit. It's 2 albums. This band are like they're a baby of a band. Like they shouldn't be doing intellectually as well as they are musically, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I would expect fuck-ups on the second album. I would expect them to try something that maybe doesn't work on one song, and you're like, you should maybe... And they don't. Everything seems surprisingly well-crafted. If I didn't know any better, I would say this band is a band made up of people that are sharks. We were like that. Oh no, we've only been a band for a few years, but secretly they've been a band for longer.
Could be onto something.
On to you, Sanguisugabogg. On to you.
New album from Sanguisugabogg, Homicidal Ecstasy, is out on the 3rd of February on Century Media Records. Links below to the band, to the pre-order link. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Check this one out. Check out some of the singles. Stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is a review. Thank you for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.